Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this conversation on creating the illustrated novel. I'm Mia Araujo, and as someone who is currently deep in the process of my own illustrated novel, I'll be moderating this amazing panel of artist authors to hear all about how they wrote and illustrated their own stories and got them published. Now, this is a pre-recorded panel, but most of us are here in the live chat ready to take your questions, so please feel free to fire away. And for those of you who missed last year's panel, you can find that video right here on this channel. So why don't we go around and introduce ourselves and we'll jump right in. Betsy, do you want to start?
Hi there, my name's Betsy Peterschmidt. I just released my first graphic novel, Mia Araujo, Castaway Commander, 3 weeks ago. So I'm very, very new, but I've been working on this book for 10 years. So it's been a long time.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Armand.
That's fantastic.
Thanks.
Armand, how about you?
My name is Armand Baltazar. I've been working in the industry as an art director and concept artist in animation for DreamWorks and Disney and Pixar. And I got to take a break from doing all that and pursue my real love, which was to write and illustrate my own stories. And so a few years ago, I created Timeless, Diego and the Rangers of the Vast Atlantic. And I'm hard at work on the sequel to that book right now as we speak.
Amazing. Victoria.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria Ying. I am an author and illustrator. Like Armand, I also used to work in animation as visual development. And then from that experience, learned that I really wanted to write and illustrate my own books. My newest novel, graphic novel, City of Illusion, which is the sequel to City of Secrets, is out in stores Tuesday, August 31st.
Congratulations.
Bravo.
Okay. Iain.
Hello. So just want to point out it's Iain with an extra I, which means no one can pronounce my name. I've been called Lane, Iain, Jan, all kinds of strange things. It is actually Iain. It's Scottish. And I was brought up on stories, just surrounded by them. My dad would pour radio plays from straight off of Mystery Science Theater off an old reel-to-reel tape recorder. And I read and eat books by the billions. Drawing was just something that I thought everyone did. I never studied it in school or anything like that. I just did it. And then lo and behold, it became my career. And that became my words for a long time. I didn't use my writing skills. I used my drawing skills to tell those stories. And then one day woke up and went, what? But I love books. So I started writing. Of course, I wrote screenplays, but after a whole bunch of those, I realized it's not all about dialogue. And so I started putting some prose in there. And lo and behold, got my first book out about 14 years ago. I've just done the revised version, and I'll tell you all about that very soon.
Excellent. And Greg, how about you?
I'm Greg Manchess, and like Iain, I think my communication was always through paint first, but my love was in books for a long time. And I realized I'm letting half of my creative spirit go into the paint as storytelling pictures. And I finally just said, wait a minute, I got to write this stuff out. I've been a freelance illustrator for 4 decades now, which sounds like a heck of a long time, even when I say it. But my book was based on a painting I did called Above the Timberline that came out, and people wanted to know what the heck is that about, because I was trying to get those stories included into the painting visually. And so I sat down and wrote it, and it came out in 2017. And actually coming up in October of this year, they're doing a full-on stage play of Above the Timberline at the Northern Michigan University Theater up there. And I've been helping out with that. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Wow.
So cool.
That's amazing. And I'm Mia Araujo. I'm currently writing and illustrating my own reimagining of Alice in Wonderland that I started back in 2012, but every day it's getting closer to being finished. And if you'd like to follow along any of our work, you can find the links in the show notes there. And also a quick shout out to our good friend, John Picasso, who couldn't be here this year to moderate because he's working on a book of his own, and we can't wait to hear all about it next year. So let's dive right in. Greg, I'd love to start with you. Now, most illustrated books are started by a writer who then brings on an illustrator and they collaborate together. But all of us here are doing both simultaneously. And I'd love to know the biggest challenges for you and how you overcame them with your book, Above the Timberline.
I think most of it's psychological. After you've been painting and drawing as long as I have, or even as long as some of the people in the audience, and especially the folks on the panel, I think we tend to forget how strong we can be with words, and the words build pictures as well. So they just fold in there right together, and it's pretty classic. I think my biggest challenge was, like I say, psychological, to give myself the permission to write what was way down inside and express that, not just in the paint, but combining that paint with the words. So trying to paint what you really can't say in words, and trying to say in words what you really can't get through in the painting, like certain feelings and sounds and smells and things like that. The other part of the challenge was to stand in front of a massive project that you just told everyone that you're going to do, and realize that there's about 123 paintings, widescreen paintings, that needed to be done within the course of a year. And in the first 3 months, I didn't panic, but I knew I had to get rolling. So I punched out 49 paintings in 3 months. And I thought, oh, I think I can do this. And then I went through a month of being very tired and had to regain that energy again. And I was in a dead run every day for 11 months, and didn't get sick during those months. I wasn't wearing a mask, but I was washing my hands constantly because I was always oil painting and eating and scrubbing my hands. And so, and I didn't go out much. So it really was about having that final goal that was looming in front of me. And each day that I could chop off another bunch of painting with it, it just kept bringing me closer and closer. So any one time I had 20 to 30 paintings tacked up on the wall, and I could look at them. And the great part about it was I had a deadline, but I didn't have a deadline daily, to the degree that I had to finish a painting every day. So I could go over and paint a little bit of snow on a mountain, and then go over and paint a face on my drawing board, and then look up and say, oh, I need some shadow on that, and be able to work 30 paintings all at once. So it was pretty fun, it was pretty exciting, and it was pretty crazy all at the same time. And that's what I had to try to keep out of my head. I work with my students now to say, give yourself the permission to take on things that seem bigger than you are, and get through it, go after it. I mean, like Betsy working 10 years on an idea. Timberline took 8 years to come to fruition. And I think that's the biggest challenge. Also, then you got to stick in 40 years of training how to paint, but that just comes.
Just 40 years. Betsy, I'd love to ask you the same question, since you're a sequential artist, and for a lot of comics and graphic novels, you have a separate writer, penciler, inker, colorist. How many of those hats did you have to wear with your book, and what were the biggest challenges of doing all of them?
I love talking about this with Greg here, because we met at Illustration Masterclass back in 2015, and we were talking about it. And yeah, Iain, you too. But like that whole week was all about like rediscovering why we love doing what we do. Right. And I'm very much the same. In the same position as Greg, where it's like you're working on a project for so long. And I was told multiple times, people are like, this is a massive project. Most people will start out with like a little webcomic here and this. I'm all of your eggs in one basket kind of guy. So I just fully invest, which people say you're not supposed to do. I do it. I don't know. I just kept going for so long that finally people were like, okay, But the reasoning for that was because I had a story I wanted to tell, and I started workshopping it in high school. And I think I'll talk a little bit more about this later when we get into some of our other questions, but like something, for me growing up, I was a reluctant reader. I never enjoyed reading prose for fun. And I thought for years it was because there was something wrong with me. I wasn't smart. I thought that's what it had to do with. But literally the last 10 years, I learned that storytelling is storytelling. It doesn't matter what format. If you're listening to it as an audiobook, if you're reading it, if it's visual, if you're telling it doesn't matter. A story is a story, and it brings everyone together. I mean, it's been a part of our species for 15 million years is storytelling. And and that's been such a fundamental, and Iain was talking about this a little bit too, but like that's always been my thing. As long as I can remember, I was drawing on placemats at restaurants, like different stories and things happening, and I knew that's what I needed to do. But back to the original question about how do you like tackle these giant beasts, and I think the key is knowing that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And what Greg was saying, like you just your face is to the pavement like this for so long, but you make it a part of your life. And I feel empty and drained if I'm not working on something, even if it's just a little bit, and I think that's how that's your calling, is you feel a pull to do it. You have to do it. It's just a part of you. And, Amelia is exactly that, for me, because I had a story I wanted to tell, and visually made the most sense to me, so I don't know if that really makes sense, but that's kind of the quick clip notes,
Oh, that's amazing. Iain, I think this is a great segue on how you come up with ideas, because, and especially would love to know which one of your ideas do you feel like is good enough basically to do this treatment on a written and illustrated novel. And I know you have a lot to share on this topic, so go ahead and take it away.
So I've just finished doing 4 new videos for the Gnomon Workshop on creativity. It felt like a good topic, and the best way to teach creativity is to be creative. So camera on Iain. Iain's now, just like you said, say something impossibly big. So I'm now going to write a story in front of the camera, not based on anything. It's going to be brand new and original, so you can see where I get my ideas from, because I'll talk you through it all. You'll watch every moment where I can't think of an answer, and that's usually 5 of those before breakfast, and then somehow you solve them and have breakfast. So I put the camera on me, wrote the story, did 11 keyframes to illustrate it, which I did as I was writing it, because I write in words and pictures at the same time. And then I designed the characters for it. And then what the hell, just because Greg's doing it, I did a radio play reading of it, and got the composer who wrote the music that I was inspired to write the story to. I contacted Ursine Vulpine and I said, I love this song, please, could I play this during my videos? And he said, well, of course. So I've got this amazing soundtrack.
Wow.
But none of that was there when I told Gnomon I was going to do DVDs on creativity. So you ask where you get ideas from. You get them as you jump off the cliff and fall, and you build those wings on the way down, right? You find a lot of the parts as you go. I had no idea what the story was, by the way. I had some vague ideas. I love Frankenstein. I love love. I love love stories. They're fantastic, especially if they're set in like a land of monsters and things like that. Or war, or somewhere where it's very extreme, and suddenly your choices are very brief and they matter so much, it's magnifying glass. So I did a kind of Frankenstein story at the end of the world, and it was fun. It was so fun that I had to stop and decide whether to share it, because it's really personal. And so I wrote a really stupid version. I thought, I can't put this as the story. So I wrote a shorter, funny, really funny, like Douglas Adams style, almost slapstick story about the same event. I let my daughter read both, and she goes, are you kidding? Throw that one in the garbage and share the first one. And of course, I always listen to her. She's my best advisor. And that's something that's important too. ideas don't just have to be yours. It's fun to brainstorm with other people. I love, but it has to be the right person. But I love people you trust just talking through this stuff, and the stuff you get back is amazing, which answers your question without any presentation at all. Ideas come by the marriage of things that would never get married. They don't even meet, except if you write them down or sketch them down and throw them in a drawer, suddenly there they are face to face, lying next to each other. And then when you pull them out again, coincidentally, there they are side by side, and you realize they were always meant to be together. Always. Why has no one ever thought of this? End of the world love story, yes. Retell Pygmalion. So yeah, that's where ideas come from for me. They're mergings of things you collect in life, and experiences, and in sketches, and from books, and from friends, and then just that random one thing that somebody says that sets it all off, a little bit of your soul, and that's the recipe for ideas. It's funny, I used to make smart ass remarks about that. You know, go to Walmart's, they got a whole section on it. But that's not helpful. They do, by the way. They have a great section on everything there. And in any store, you just go in, don't look at the stuff, look at the people, look at them shopping. You realize it is the Wagner opera in a supermarket as they run around with those carts, which is just like horses and chariots. And it's a war. It's a war to get the stuff. And anyway, wherever you go, there's ideas everywhere. You just need to open your eyes, be open, have fun, make sure you have fun. That's the best part.
So that's actually a perfect segue from the idea to now getting it done, right? Because if you don't get it done, it is just a really great idea and no one will ever see it. So Armand, I'd love to talk to you. Your Timeless book was 600 pages, about 200 pieces of art. What was your process on juggling the rewrites that happen with any kind of writing and then finishing the art? And did you have to redo or cut any of the art as you went along? And even if you want to talk about deadlines, did you set them for yourself? Did the publisher set them for you?
Yeah, well, man, that's a biggie. So let me answer that by sort of touching on a couple of points that Betsy and Greg kind of started us all rolling on. And the thing is that like every single person that is here on this panel are cut from that one cloth that said, look at this big monumental adventure that I've set before me. I'm going, right? And so that's it. Whether it was, you know, heroic bravery or it was, you know, tomfoolery, whatever the case may be, we leapt, right? And so now I leaped into this project. And when I started this project, it was supposed to be a 24-page children's picture book for my son. That's how it started. And then it became something bigger, and it started to evolve. And then I wanted to write an adventure like from my boyhood, and somehow or another I got in my head I needed to make my Dune, right? My Frank Herbert, you know, sort of magnum opus. And the thing is, when I made this book, I didn't think anyone would want it. I just figured I'm going to make it, I'm going to self-publish, put it out there, and I scratched that big itch. Ends up a publisher wanted it, looked at it and said, you've written something gigantic. In fact, the original first draft was something like 160,000 words. And so it was multiple books. And they said, who is this for? You know, and then we discussed it, and that's for another question later, but it ended up going to be a middle grade adventure book. And the publisher said, look, by the sheer size of it, we can't make that kind of a book. So it's got to be smaller. So the first thing I had to do with this monstrous thing that I had done with no restraint is to find a way to tell the story, tell the core of the story as concise as possible and still keep the spirit of it. So it went through a whole massive amount of rewrites. And the thing is that in making a book like this, or like Greg has sort of felt this too, you have this big written thing, you've got a lot of illustrations to make, and you've got a publisher who's like, we got to get this thing out. We want to make sure we hit it when we do. And you have to sort of set yourself on a schedule. Now, the thing is for me, what was, and probably Greg, you found the same thing, is that you write the words, you make the images, and then you also meet up against a couple of different things. One, there is the creative challenges of getting the content, both visually and in prose, to sort of work together. And then you have the actual physical limitations of what the publisher can produce. like how many pieces of artwork, where that artwork needs to fall, the pacing of it. And so you need to start moving these pieces around. And sometimes moving these pieces means trimming the words, evolving the words, trimming the art, evolving the art. And so it was always this kind of, this kind of dance. And it took the both of us. So there was me being gung-ho, working on it. There was my publisher and editor going, this is what we need. This is what feels good. And kind of playing both by the gut and intuition and by discipline and regular schedule. But it was really hard. And everything that Greg talked about, buckling down, Betsy talked about, you got to throw yourself in, you become tunnel vision. That does tend to happen, but to circle all the way back around, all of this happens because you've done the work, you've tried to become a great artist, you've tried to live life, and then you try to pour all of that into what you're doing day after day, month after month, until finally one day you're turning in that last piece of artwork, you're putting the word "the end," and then you're calling up your good friend Iain McCaig to do a little drawing of you and your son to stick on the back cover. That's kind of how the journey can go sometimes.
Yeah. And you swear never to do it again. And I think that lasts about a day, maybe a week.
Actually, when I finished that final painting, I was like, God, I got to come up with something else because I don't want to do this again.
That's exactly what happened to me too. It's really about the journey. It really is. Which I know is a cheesy line, but it's true. It's like, oh, you're done. Doesn't that feel great? I'm like, no, I want to work on more.
Right, right.
Right.
Oh man. Well, Victoria, actually, it's since the last year that we've talked to you, you've put out a second book and you're working on a third, and you're doing sequential work. So you've probably done more art than all of us on this panel in this last year.
I mean, Betsy also does comics. So
yeah,
but there's definitely a huge volume of work that goes into comics. And for those of you who want to pursue comics, one thing I'd want you guys to know is that whatever you think you're good at drawing, you're probably only half that good when you're doing comics. Because scheduling and all these other things, you just need to get it done. And so like, you can draw this building better, but like you also can't. Anyways, sorry, what was the question?
Oh, no worries. I was just wondering how you avoid burnout by being so productive.
Yeah. I mean, I think burnout is such a interesting concept that all of us have been facing, especially with the pandemic. Like, work has become kind of our main outlet, and getting so focused on that can be really easy. But for me, like what I like to do is I'm really good at what I call time math, which means like I can schedule out, I know exactly how long things take. So whenever I talk to my editors or my agent, I'm like, this is how much time I need. And when I tell them that, I'm including weekends. Like I am cutting out all my weekends. So I'm like, Saturdays and Sundays, I take 2 days off every week, no matter what. I can work those days, but I'm going to choose not to. So like, you have to be really protective of your time, especially if you're like a freelancer or you're working in publishing, because no one, there's no union rep. There's no one who's going to be like, no, go home. Like you have to do that for yourself. And it can be really challenging because I think that we are all kind of pre-programmed to think that productivity and work, like that's kind of our value. But, you're a person and you need to take time for yourself, and not just like, oh, I'll take a break at the end. No, take time every week. Try to protect your evenings too. Like I only work from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day. I never work nights and I never work weekends. And that's because I've scheduled my time out so that I can do that. And, that's just something that you have to be protective of, because just because you can do something where you can like, oh, I can wake up early, I can stay up late, I can work weekends. Don't do that. Don't commit yourself to that early on, because then you're going to face that you're going to eventually burn out. So just make sure to be precious with your time too, because that's also important. You're a human being and you need to live your life.
Where did you learn that?
Yeah.
I did the opposite for too long. And then like for 10 years, I worked every day until 11 p.m. And then I worked every weekend. And then I woke up in 2015 and was like, good God, never again. So yeah, after that, I was like, yeah, you got to learn to say no too. Like freelance comes along and you're like, well, I can do it. But, I think that if you were really, really protective of your evenings or your weekends, then you can learn to say no a lot more easily.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Did you
I
have
should have met you at the beginning of my career. That would
right?
have helped a
Yes.
lot.
You know,
Yeah.
and young people too, they're like, I don't need that. What am I doing with my weekends anyways? It doesn't matter.
It drives me crazy when I talk to students and they're like, "Oh yeah, sleep is optional." I'm like,
No.
"No, it's not."
Oh,
You're gonna be 30 and you're gonna regret those choices.
I regret it. Well, it's like it's a time isn't, well, you're talking about comics, right? And how
Yeah.
you have to be really efficient with your time. And this goes for all art too, but like comics are a great example of it because you can't invest all of this time. You have to be efficient. And I've noticed, and I learned this as a senior in college, the more rested I was, the better my work was. The more sleep deprived I was, the worse my work was. Why would I want to work sleep deprived? Sorry, my bird's yelling. Why would I be sleep deprived and work on something that would take 4 hours if I can be rested and get that same amount of work done better in 2 hours? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is amazing. And Victoria, actually, you had this really cool page out of your journal that you posted on your Instagram where you actually track your mood each day that you're doing.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. I have that with me, so I'll show you guys real quick.
That's a
So
great idea.
I love journaling. I think that that's been a really helpful thing for me, especially as someone with ADHD who loses time and loses, stuff just disappears all the time. So trackers are great for me for a couple of reasons. One, it kind of gives me this like reward incentive. So this is my tracker for my current book. Each of these little boxes is a page. And then as I do the page, I kind of color code it in with what my mood was when I did it. And, I also have on this page, like good days, like when there are days that are really good, what did I do that day that made it a good day? Like, did I work out? Did I eat well? Did I have friends over? Like whatever it was. And then I can keep repeating that. So then I can have more good days when I draw. This is also helpful for me because then I'm like, hey, I did the thing for today. And I get to fill in a little bubble.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Well, I'm talking about visual too, where like you can look at it and see, right? Yeah.
What's my progress? So.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
I just put words on the paper.
That's good too.
Yeah. Whatever works, that's perfect.
Yeah, I also have pages that look like that. It's just like words.
Oh, okay.
They don't all look like that.
Yeah, I feel like I just draw like isolated, like existential moments where I'm just like laying on the ground.
Oh my God.
I don't know.
Self-care.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
My God.
Oh man, I'm so glad you talked about all that, Betsy and Victoria, actually, about keeping it real. Like this is honestly the kind of life that you want to live, that you're making for yourself. And if you want to do this for a long time, like what does your life look like while you're making it? I think it's really important to control that and early on and not set a precedent, an unhealthy precedent for yourself. And sort of on that tangent, I suppose, is that these books take a lot of time and it's a lot of unpaid work actually, but we have to keep the lights on somehow. So I'd love to turn it over to Betsy and Greg about this because both of your books took about 8 to 10 years from idea to finished book. And I just would love to know how you balance time between paid work that's sort of supporting that project and then actually getting the book finished, if you wouldn't mind sharing about that.
Go ahead, Betsy.
You want to? Oh, I was about to say you want to go first. We're too polite. Okay, I'll go first. Thanks. So for me, it's funny. People have asked me that. It's like, oh, that's amazing. You do comics full time. You do art full time. And I actually don't. My day job is currently as the book art and design manager for Blizzard Entertainment. And the jobs before this day job, I was working as a designer for publishing in children's publishing. So Penguin and then Scholastic. And that's how I've kept the lights on secretly. I was juggling freelance for a while, but once I got my book deal in 2016, that became my night job, so to speak. And I think I have to be honest, it's hard because I did an illustration a few years ago, this was in college, this is a while ago, but of two sides fighting between choosing a full-time freelance career and like a 9 to 5, and the pros and cons of each, and then the character in the middle being pulled both ways. And it's so hard, right? Because one side, it's like, it symbolizes like freedom and you get to do what you want. And it's, oh, that's integrity, right? And all this stuff. But then there's no security. And like, well, what if you don't, like a lot of publishing houses, it takes longer for the paycheck to come in because for whatever reason, it's just, like they're understaffed or whatever. And that paycheck being late by two weeks, like, are you going to be okay? So you don't have to worry about that if you have a day job where you're getting a regular paycheck. But the downside of the day job is you don't have that, that 9 to 5 or whatever that 8-hour period is to work on your thing. But I think this kind of loops back into what Victoria was saying. You just have to be extremely conservative about your time regardless. And this is one reason why I've really learned that having the day job, night job structures worked really well for me, because at a really young age, I was diagnosed with chronic depression and a bleeding extrovert. So I need to be with people, and being in an office setting, especially at a place like Blizzard, where everyone is so freaking talented, just surrounded by talent and just like kind of by osmosis, like absorbing the creative energy, and then going home and feeling so inspired and driven to work on my own thing. That's really what has been my, saving grace, essentially, and obviously it's different for different people, but it's really worked for me. And it's nice to just have that routine and have that structure. And then like Victoria was saying, making time for yourself to be with friends, to be with family, and sleep is never, ever, ever overrated.
Absolutely.
I cheated a little bit. I put in a almost 40-year career in order to do this beforehand. But cheating? In those
yeah. Sorry, what? That's cheating? That's a long time.
Yeah, it's very cheating. So the thing was that during those 8 years, I was doing my freelance work, and I did like you did, Betsy. It sort of became my night job. It was working on my book, except that night job came at any hour of the day when I'd get some time and I could sketch and write at the same time. And so by the time I got to that 7th year, when it was going to take, well, actually the 6th year, it was going to take a year to paint and then 1 year to publish. I was good to go. I was ready to go. So I had saved up enough to cover myself for a year, but I was also teaching during that time. And if there were any kind of special freelance jobs that came along, I kind of worked those in as well. But like Victoria, I had a structured schedule for that. It wasn't as cool as hers. She took the nights off and the weekends. And I tried to take the weekends off, but I definitely got the sleep in there. So my schedule was 9 to basically 5, take an hour out to go to the coffee shop and drink hot chocolate and read a book for an hour, and then eat dinner, and then get back at the board and work until about 10:30, 11, watch a movie, decompress, and then up early and back at it. And then I try to get weekends to be easier. I still couldn't resist. If I'm standing in the studio, I'm going to paint on something. I mean, they're just staring at you at that point. But the cheating was actually building up enough income that I could turn away work for an entire year. And I didn't quite do that all that well. I was still sneaking some jobs in there. But that allowed me the confidence and the personal support to maintain my schedule and keep going. And then I built the dopamine hits just kept increasing as I got closer and closer to those finishes and stuff. Also, no one was going to tell me not to do this. And 2, no one was going to stop me, because this was 120 plus oil paintings that were all mine.
Yeah, and that's the best about traditional art, right? Actually, can you see this? These are literally all of the pages right here. My book. Yeah, there's 5 of them. And each of them is it's
Wow.
all the original art. I was secretly
Oh,
hoping I would
wow.
open this upside down, be like, this is my art.
They're even
I know.
painted originally, like on.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Wow.
Greg and I both have our, well, actually, I think we all do traditional here, right?
Pretty much.
Or
I
mix of
paint
both.
digitally a lot just because in the film industry you have to do 5 to 10 variations on things. And it's much
Yeah.
easier to do variations in Photoshop.
Yeah,
But,
that's true.
but I have a
and
whole
lately,
studio upstairs that is just traditional, and I spend most of my time up there.
all my paintings are rolled up in the closet, Betsy. They're in a bucket that holds all of the
Wow.
they're rolled. It's crazy.
That's
Anyway.
nuts.
I'm hoping to have a show in Paris in a year or two of all the originals from Timberline. But we'll see. With
Wow.
the
I think that's
pandemic
gonna
going
happen.
on, I don't know.
I think
Yeah.
that'll happen. That'll be really cool.
That would be amazing.
You're all invited, everyone.
I'll be there.
Woo!
Count on it.
So for anyone in the audience that is worried about like, how will I have the time to do all this? As you just heard, we juggle it, we make it happen. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how long it took to finish it, as long as you do finish it. So I just want to say that as a point of encouragement for anybody. And, I've been waiting tables for 6 years. I've been taking on freelance, living off savings. I have a partner that helps as well. And so you make it happen, but it's everybody has different challenges, different life. And if you want to do this, you can do it. It's just might take a little longer, and that's okay. So, but I did want to, I'm sorry. No,
Can I add something really quick to that?
Yeah. Sure.
Speaking of the whole juggling thing, I think it's really important to remember, and I'm literally talking about this right now with my therapist, how to not compare yourself to others, because everyone's path is special to them. And it's really, really hard not to compare when you're surrounded by so much talent, because you see other people, oh, well, this person published 5 books at the age of, and now they're 26 and they have 5 books out, and, but like you could compare and forever and drive yourself insane. The point is you need to just focus on your own path and your own journey. And at least for me, I've noticed that the less I compare myself to others, the better the work is. There's like a direct correlation. I don't know about you guys, but that's definitely been the case for me.
Yeah, there's something I wanted to add too, which is going to be opening with a really weird statement, but COVID and this pandemic did something. It's been horrible. It's been really terrible and tragic in times, especially in my life. But it also opened my eyes and was a great thing. There was a great thing that came out of it for me. And one of the things was being forced to be stuck in my house with my family 24/7 all the time made me really understand what was important in my life. And all the things that Victoria was talking about with scheduling hours and work, I'll be honest with this group, with you all and the audience that's watching, that wasn't me. I was lopsided. You got a 600-page book with 200 paintings, working in the animation business. Like I came from that mindset of like, go, 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 drive, keep going, right? Don't sleep. This is the highest thing. You got to do it. You got to achieve, you got to go. And the thing is, when you're like that, when you're wired like that, you kind of forget what's important. And when the pandemic started, and I was jamming on Timeless Book 2, I was angry at the world becoming what it was. And, I took that anger out on what I was creating. There was a lot of anger in what I created. And I woke up one day when my son looked at me and goes, "Dad, you don't look healthy. You don't look well," And that one statement made me look at everything. I looked the way I was making my art, looked at the way I was telling my stories, looked the way I was living, and looked the way I was treating my family and myself. And made me think, you know what? I got to put life first. I got to put the ones I love first. And I got to put life right. And when I can make life right, then what I have to say, what I have to offer, what I have to draw will reflect that, And so Timeless 2 has taken a long time because I rewrote the book because it's, halfway through, I looked at it, I was like, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of all this stuff that's not in balance. I don't want to leave that message to the people who read my book. I don't leave it to kids. I'm going to redo it. And so I've sort of been trying to be healthier. I've been trying to, I'm going to actually make one of these charts that you did, Victoria, because that's awesome. That's brilliant. And I'm trying to teach myself how to be balanced and a happy artist that's living a good life. And this talk it's been awesome already for that. So I just wanted to add that little bit because, that's a big part of where we need to go moving forward. I know I need to.
That's brilliant. Oh my gosh.
Can I chip one other thing
Yeah,
in there?
I was going to ask you. Go ahead.
Because people keep telling me I come from different planets, or that, you know, I'm not human and stuff. But I think what happened is just the people who were putting things into the human beings on the conveyor belt when they were making us took a lunch break when I was there, and I didn't get certain things. So I can work for 18, 24 hours a day and be more rested than if I had 8 hours of sleep. But it's really important what I do in that 18 hours. And drawing and writing, but mostly drawing, is a meditation for me. I don't even look where I'm drawing anymore. I kind of look an inch or two above it, and it's like dreaming. And I don't, you know, you're all sitting. I'm standing. Well, how can you sit when you draw? It's too exciting. And your whole body gets into it then. And so for me, it's an experience, and it's a relaxing, meditative, wonderful experience. I have to force myself to stop at the end of the day because I'm so euphoric from the hell ride, the creative hell ride. And it didn't matter whether the drawings worked or not. It mattered that you did it, that you were lucky enough to hold the pencil while this stuff is coming out. And how cool is that? So because of that, I really don't get jealous of other artists. I don't compare myself to other artists because it's all the same creative juice to me. I just love it seeing coming out of any place. And I'm really honored when it comes out of the pencil I'm holding. But there's a creative force that just manifests itself. And you know, so that wacky, weird mindset allows me to overwork myself. And so I do what Victoria was suggesting. I make a different kind of plan. I got given a Franklin planner when I started at ILM, and it literally changed my working life. As they said, make a list of everything that means something to you. You know, when you're lying on your deathbed and you're laughing because you had this great life, this long, happy life, what did you do? Write those things down, right? And put them in a box called A, a big A on the front. Then what do you have to do? Keep the lights going and keep your tummy fed and keep your family together, and put that in box B. And then everything else that you want to do, but isn't one of those other two things, you put in box C. Then you start with your blank day, and everybody's got the same 24 hours and it's blank the next day, and you just take box A first and you put some of A in prime time on that blank page. And when you've moved your life forward and got one of those things that's going to make you giggle on your deathbed, you can take some of B and make sure you paid the bills, or you met that deadline, or did this. But that's the second thing. And then there's always some cracks left over, you know, usually at the end of the day. That, for me, that's however long the day is, there's always an hour at the end of the day. And that hour is when I read. And that's my big reward. So I lie on my back and I put the book over my head like this. And when it smacks me in the face, I turn the lights off and go to bed. That's my routine. And because I have A, B, and C interwoven in my day, it's kind of like those exercises where, you know, you might be doing your curls and your lifts, but you're also squatting at the same time. I forget what that's called, but you multi-purpose your exercises. I multi-purpose my day. There really, for me, isn't a work time, because it's all work time, but work time might be having a great time with my family and trying to be present. Enjoy, like, how did she laugh? Wow, that was great. What made her laugh? I wonder if I can make her laugh. And you just enjoy the moment, because that's the juice you put into your art and your stories.
Exactly. Yeah. Like that those moments feed your work exactly and directly. Like that's why it's so
weird
having
make it separate. It's not separate to me. There's life.
Exactly. It's all connected. Yeah. And that's why I feel kind of wear my book out, because it's like so personal, because I have all these personal moments that I've
well, that's your A box, right? And that should be given prime time. Exactly. But you also, I mean, being a good person, saving our planet, doing all that stuff, that's it. That's in my A box. That's important to me. I really want to make sure there's something here for my kids and for me too. And so that's actually.
I stand when I paint, Ian.
I've seen you. It's okay. I didn't mean to shame you sitting in that chair. Besides, if you just stand, it's not good. You literally have to move. So I always have music.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm drawing and stuff. Yeah. And again, that's not for everybody. And that's what's so awesome, is that how different we all are. Victoria, I actually would love to get a picture of a page from that book, and I'm going to try it just for the heck of it, because it's as opposite to the way I think as you possibly could get. And that's where you need to go. So all the good ideas are outside the box, your box. So please, that was enlightening. By the way,
when I first started my studio job, they gave us diaries to write our jobs down. I kept it going when I went freelancing. I have 40 of these. I know everything I've done in my entire life.
Well, I've been listening very carefully to everything you said about taking on something as big as a graphic novel or a hugely illustrated book, because I'm about to embark on a project that I can't talk about, and it's of that nature, and it will be my very first venture into that world. The closest analogy I have is storyboarding an entire film single-handedly, and I have done that. And it's like you're saying, there's a certain amount of time, and you you put your energy where it's needed for that frame, and that's all that goes on that frame. And then you hit the buzzer after 15 minutes and move on to the next drawing in 15 minutes, and almost literally, right? Because I got it down. I knew I could draw this. If it's that complex, if it's a two-figure thing and it's in a certain kind of environment, I can do that in 15 minutes. This one, it's a battle. It's from, massive Lord of the Rings thing. I'll give that one an hour. But then I can do the next one in 5 minutes, because just one good face, So yeah, I'm about to do one of those projects, and I may be missing this panel again next year or two.
Can't wait to see it. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, well, we'll see. It's what you're doing, Mia. It's negotiations and contracts, and it's weird gearing yourself up to do something that really is monumental. You clear your life away to do these kind of things, and then the contract, you have to be willing to say no. It's not a negotiation if you can't walk away.
Exactly.
So at the same time as giving your heart and soul to something, you have to be willing to say no if it's not right. Yeah. And that's exactly where I am, and that's where you are right now too.
And that's actually a perfect segue to where I wanted to go next, is the topic of publishing, because we're talking about traditional publishing, so not like Kickstarter or self-publishing, which is another route, but it does involve you having to wear some more hats, including overseeing production, distribution, and marketing and things like that. But Victoria, we all chose the traditional publishing route, but I'm curious to know what made you make that choice, and actually, how far along were you on your first book before you sought out your literary agent?
Yeah, so I've actually gone the self-publishing route before. I have a few Kickstarter projects that were funded that way, and those challenges, like you said, of like production and being all these different types of people was something that I didn't want to do again in terms of my next book. So I actually had an agent for just illustration from before, like picture book illustration. But when I wanted to write my own stuff, things changed, because finding an agent is finding another member of your team. So a lot of people are very hesitant to get an agent because they're afraid of like what this person's going to change your book to be, or perhaps they're afraid of rejection, which there is a lot of rejection in traditional publishing. Yes, that is true. But like finding this person is incredibly important for you, because they're going to make sure that you keep all your rights, like film rights, board game rights, like stuff you don't ever even think about because you're so focused on like writing and making the thing that you want to do. And they're the people who really are versed in how to make sure that you are protected as an author. And they're also someone who it's really important that they get you. So like I said, I started out with a picture book agent who was great for that. But when it came to my writing, she and I just didn't connect. Like she didn't see my books the way I saw my books. And she just didn't have the same vision for my career as I did. So I ended up having to go find a new agent, which was difficult, but at the same time, so rewarding. And once I found that person and she really connected to my book and she really was able to see my vision and also help me achieve it in a way that like I couldn't have done by myself. That's something that I think a lot of us author illustrators, because we are doing everything by ourselves, right? Like we're drawing it, we're writing it, we're doing all this stuff, but more input and someone who also understands you and really gets what you're trying to do can really help push your book to the next level. Because one person doing everything is great because we have so much control, but on the other hand, like, we're really so myopic because we only have one point of view. We've only lived one life. So having more people who are on your team who understand you and who can give you that feedback, really, really important. So at what point, oh, go ahead.
No, well said.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And editors too. Like, if you want to go the traditional publishing route, you're going to get more people on your team. You're going to get an editor, you're going to get a publicist, you're going to get a marketing person. And all those people, all they want to do is hopefully push your book to the best that it can be, and not in their point of view, but in your point of view too. So like, when you are doing this process, you're going to have a lot of phone calls. Like, I had like 6 or 7 phone calls with my last group of agents who wanted to rep me. And I talked to them on the phone and was like, hey, like, what are you into? Like, these are my influences. Do you understand those influences? And what would you do to change my book? And, there's some people who said things that I was like, I don't agree with that. And then there's some people who I was like, oh my God, like, I didn't think about it that way. And you're right, that would make it better. And those are the people who you want on your team. So you do get a chance. You don't have to like accept the first person who comes to you. Like, you can actually interview a bunch of people, and you're the person who gets to decide, like, this is the person that I want for me. So, there is a whole process. And on my blog, I have like a detailed list to go through it. I won't talk about it right here because there's a lot of steps. But in that process, what you're doing is you're just trying to make sure that you guys are a good match. And when you do that, it really depends. If you're writing a prose novel, like all words, you do that once the book is finished. It has to be done. If you're doing a graphic novel, that's actually really different. You actually try to find them much earlier in the process, because graphic novels are sold on proposal. They're not sold on a manuscript. So you usually have to have like your outline. You have to know how it ends, right? You can't just be like, this is my idea. You have to be like, okay, and then these things happen. So you have to have an outline. You have to have some sample writing, like a script maybe, but also like, if you're doing a graphic novel, you could do it in thumbnails. People do it differently. And then some finished pages, just to prove that you can do it, that you actually have the vision to see it through. And then that's when you usually try to find an agent if you're a graphic novelist.
That's amazing.
I would add to like what you're saying about building your team. I feel like I feel like I've talked about therapy a lot, but I feel like a good editor is like a good therapist. Like, they don't give you the answers, they ask you the right questions so you can find those answers yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And then my editor friend was saying, yeah, therapists are life editors.
That's true. And I think that another thing about feedback, that's something that I think we all had to learn how to accept, because coming from the film world, right? Like, an art director's like, change this, and you're like, okay, like, you just do it. And then, when you're writing your own books, like, you're the person who is in charge of it, and you have to distinguish what feedback you take and what you don't. Mm-hmm. And the best way to do that is to think about all feedback as diagnostic and not prescriptive. So when someone is like, this character wasn't connecting for me, change it this way. The second half of that, maybe not, but like the first half of that is true. Like, whatever it was, like, there's a problem there, and you as the author could fix it in your own way. And that's something that I think is difficult for a lot of people who come from the film and television world, because we're so used to just being like, oh, you want it changed? Okay, here it is. We're doing exactly what you want to do. But like, you have to be able to have enough strength in your own vision and your own like conviction to be like, nope, that's not what I wanted to do. I know what I'm doing. And you have to know what feedback to take and what not to take. And so when you're talking to editors and agents, you have to know, okay, this is a person who I trust to give me feedback. This is not a person I trust to give me feedback.
And you can learn that in time. Yeah. You make mistakes in the beginning and you say, oh, I won't do that again. And you learn your way to that confidence. Mm-hmm. I think I had to starting out.
Oh yeah, it was hard at first, because whenever my editor would say something, I would just be like, okay. And then completely like lose sight of my own vision without remembering that I am the author, like I am the person who wrote this. So
you guys bring up a really good point, especially Victoria. It's like when you work in entertainment, you're kind of conditioned to that, right? You've been a professional at helping other people tell their stories, right? And so it's easy to forget the value of your own voice, the value of your own story. And the thing is too, is that listening, what you said about having the right editor, it's kind of like somebody who sort of gets you and gets your voice, and you can sense that they're behind trying to help you find your way of delivering what's important, and that's really, really key. And the thing is too, here's the other thing, Greg, you probably felt this, is when you start dealing with people in publishing, and you are a person who's come from art, and they're like, they kind of almost, you feel like, well, these guys are the pros, they're dealing with words all the time, so they must know what they're talking about because I've come from art. And sometimes you'll meet editors or agents who like, well, you only know art, you better listen to me because I come from that world, right? And so, there is a degree of truth to that. However, you also have to be able to pull back objectively and listen to what they're saying, look at what the kind of advice that they're giving, and see whether or not it's really in tune with getting you to where you need to go. And sometimes you do get that advice that's like, whoa, wait a minute, I would have never thought of that. That's good advice. Even though I don't like to hear it, it is good advice. And then sometimes you just get bad advice,
Yeah, well, I've discovered in time over the years that there are people who are visually oriented and people who are not visually oriented. And it seems like right now there's fewer visually oriented folks than otherwise. And you can learn it. You can absolutely learn it. But we've been training visually for the longest time, even since we were children. And we see things when they're presented to us that others can look right at and not see it at all. And you have to explain it to them. And sometimes it's miraculous to them. There are times when I work with an art director and not explain, but share with them, communicate where I'm going and where they want to go. And we meet in the middle. And it's revelatory at the time because they suddenly understand where you're going, and I start to see what they need. And this is a whole other conversation, but we won't go deep into that. But yeah, you're right.
This is touching on a whole completely separate and really important panel that we should do next year. Right?
Yeah, let's do that.
To take feedback.
Again, I got those parts left out on the conveyor belt. So I've never, my final year assessment from art school was Iain McCaig listens carefully to everything you say and then ignores you completely. And it's true. It's true. I do. Because I have a vision in my head of what I was trying to do and trying to say. The only part of what you say that's relevant to me is, did it bump you? Did you get it?
Yeah.
Did you get something else? Ooh, was it better? Ooh, how can I bring that out? Because I didn't even think of that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I love feedback and I love an audience, but the notion of an art director telling you to change something and changing it because they told you to change it is like antimatter to me. I would not take that job. I would leave that company. I would say, no. What is bothering you? Tell me what's bumping you. Let's find a way to unbump it. Because this is what I'm trying to say. But the reason for that is that, to me, we artists, we're actors, right? And when we do group collaborations, we got cast because of the flavor of the acting we do, who we are, what we do. In the same way you get a Brad Pitt or you get a Meryl Streep or whatever. And really, when I hire people, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah. Who are you? Yes, I want to see your skills and make sure you know how to draw this in 3-point perspective and all that stuff. Yeah. But once you got the skills, who are you? What do you have to say? What's your flavor? And is that the right casting for this particular piece of art that I need?
Well, I think we all in here know too. All of us know too that all of our ideas are not exactly singularly dependent on us. I mean, sharing those ideas. We all know, especially from film, Iain and Armand and the graphic novelists here know that it's almost a team effort that comes toward you as the main artist doing the work, and you have to remain open to them and also open to yourself. And that collaboration is a wonderful growing ground for bursting ideas out of there that they hadn't thought of and you hadn't thought of and stuff. So
you remember that on your book, you're the chooser.
Yeah.
That's important, right?
That's right. As a friend of mine said, you are the arbiter of taste.
Well, I have a really quick example of this. When I first presented my first draft of my comic, which I wrote in thumbnails, because I writing like this doesn't make sense. I have to see the characters interacting with each other in order for it to really work. Yeah. And I sent it to my editor, and the first thing he said was, "What does Amelia want?" And I was like, "Oh, what does she want?" And then I like missed my stops on the subway because I was thinking about like this. I was like psychoanalyzing my main character, and as soon as I figured that out, all the pieces came together in this beautiful way. And that's an example of like a good steward of your story, right? Somebody who's helping you.
Definitely, absolutely. So I think this is a great place to actually end the discussion, but if anyone has any last thoughts they'd like to leave our audience with, any encouragement, please take it away.
Not a dress rehearsal. Do it now. Whatever you most want to do it now, because this is your time on stage. I've had 2 near-death experiences to remind me, and every time when I came back, well, both times when I came back, I looked at that closet, which is stuffed full of stories, and realized I haven't published any of them yet. And it's like, well, if I hadn't come back, that would all be gone. Nobody knows what's in there. Nobody cares. But I have a chance. I have another chance. Well, don't wait for your near-death experiences. Do it now.
Yeah.
Get it done.
And I also want to say, your story is important. Like whatever you have to say, you are a unique being. No one has ever been like you ever on this planet. So if you feel like you have a story to tell it, do it.
Yeah.
And tell it to the truest form of yourself. Like the truer you are to yourself, the more of the, the noise you push away and you get to the core of who you are, the better your story is going to be, the more people are going to resonate with it. It's amazing. It's terrifying, but it's amazing the rewards you get for that.
Damn straight.
That fits with me, Betsy. I just want to say authenticity is compelling and contagious at the same time. If it's really you and you're really putting that stuff out there, you will be speaking to an audience that becomes attracted to what you're saying, and they come toward you. And once you've got a little bit of audience, that grows from there and gets bigger.
Sure does.
There are some of you here who've come to watch us talk. Maybe you've never written anything. Maybe you've never drawn anything, but yet you felt compelled to come here and listen to 6 people blather on about why they did what they did. And the thing is, just because you have that nugget of curiosity that brought you here, you've got it in you. So you owe it to yourself to give yourself that chance to see what you're capable of. And you got to know this, right? Is that every step that you take from this day moving forward, there is no such thing as failing. There is no such a thing as making a mistake. What it means is every step, whether it's forward, whether it's sideways, whether it even feels backwards, is that one step closer to seeing what you're capable of. So get out there and write that story, make that art, make it happen.
That's perfect. That's brilliant. I want to thank these amazing panelists for sharing with us today. And if you want to see more books like theirs, go buy them at your local bookstore, ask for them at the library, tell all your friends, share on social media. That's the best way to tell publishers that we want more books like this. Thank you all for listening, and we can't wait to see what you create. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers. Thanks, Mia.
Thanks, Mia.
Thank you, Mia.
Thanks, Mia.